Hello, friends. We are here to talk about the latest episode of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. I know that we did not review, I think it was the last episode, but we kind of touch on what happened there. So, whatever. We're at the continuation of the Denise and Erica stuff. I've already said I just don't truly understand it. I thought it was because I had not watched that season, but they keep showing the same clip and then Denise keeps referencing the same thing and then Erica keeps giving the same explanation. And so it's obviously just that one clip. So at this point I feel like I've seen everything I need to see and I still don't understand. I don't know that it's going to make a difference, right? I can bet my bottom dollar that Denise is not going to be at the reunion. They'll probably touch on it a little bit, but I just feel like if it's not really that substantive and doesn't really have anything to do with anything, it's not going to be a continuation of things. It's not going to lead to Denise being around. I don't know why we're spending 3+ episodes on it, but okay. Maybe it is, and I've already said this, maybe it's entertaining to other viewers who know the background, but it just feels dumb. But for the sake of analyzing it and giving credit to feelings at the very least on a humanity level, I can understand if Denise, I guess, is feeling some type of way. She already said that she was feeling some type of way and she wanted to have a conversation with Erica about it. I think there are different undertones, and I think that undertone is just that she thinks that Erica is a mean person. Erica can come off as very dismissive, so I can get that probably riled Denise up, but I think that to Erica's credit, she is also very confused. In this episode, we did get more context to Erica saying, we had this conversation when we went for coffee however many years ago. I apologize, and, I thought that we were moving forward. So it is weird to hear that it's still coming back up, and I wish that there was some context as to why it's coming back up. But again, I think that the undertone is just that she thinks Erica is a mean person. And I think that was highlighted by Erica bringing up, Denise's daughter and her OnlyFans. And I can't say that it was warranted. When she first said it, I'm like, okay, I guess valid points, right? To say like, okay, we're having a conversation about your kids not knowing about like sexual things, but your child has an OnlyFans. But to my understanding, that was then, 3-4 years ago, and now that child, I would assume, is not a child anymore, at least 18, right? Especially if she has an OnlyFans. So speaking on what the child is doing now versus what was the situation back then, obviously she wasn't saying it to make a good point. She was saying it to be nasty and to weaponize it. So that part I don't like. Erica's that girl, you know what I'm saying? It's just, I don't know if anybody found it entertaining. I don't really too much get into the Beverly Hills hashtag on Twitter because, to be honest, this season hasn't really been that entertaining to me, so I don't really care what anybody thinks about it on the Twitter, because for me, Twitter is for kikis and the cackles, but I don't know, we're kiki and a cackle about it because there's just nothing entertaining. So I don't know if people thought it was entertaining, but I thought it was pretty gross. The part that was entertaining for me, though, because at least it's something substantive, is to hear Denise talk and say, well, this is what you do, Erica, you just deflect. And Erica's position is, she's like, we haven't deflected on anything about me for the last couple years. And I'm like, maybe she's been blinded because there's been nothing but deflection from Erica's situation for the last couple years. But okay, girl, whatever, fine. And then, Denise throws a low blow back and she's like, so you didn't know that $22 million was deposited into your account? And Erica's like, no, that was proven that it didn't, blah, 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 whatever. So that whole argument just kind of goes nowhere. But at the end, it seems like the consensus, at least amongst the people that we would care what their opinion is, the consensus is that Erica went too far, and she did. She's not going to apologize for it. She's not the type of girl. We probably won't see much of Denise anymore, if I had to bet. So it just doesn't seem like it matters. My takeaway is that Erica is still Erica. I always look to see, though, like in that group of people, like the Kyles and the Dorits and the Ericas, and then when Renner was there, I always look for small pockets of accountability for them to give each other because they're not really good at that. So, Dorit and Erica link up, and Dorit's asking what happened after she left. Obviously, it's the OnlyFans thing. And she brings that up, and Dorit laughs about it. So I'm like, okay, accountability out the window, but why would I have that expectation? And then Erica then asked, well, I was more so, and she was like, I was kind of in the kitchen when, the Garcelle and you thing happened, so what was happening with that? And then we also get a cutaway to, Sutton and Garcelle having a meeting, so we get to see the two perspectives. And the biggest thing with the Garcelle and the Sutton part is that Garcelle is saying, she was really upset by it, and she cried herself to sleep, and all of these things, right? And they're talking a lot about, which they talked about last episode. Garcelle brought it up. She said a lot of like pointed things to Dorit during that conversation, which we did in review, so we'll talk about it a little bit. But and they're talking about it now. She's speaking about the fact that, Dorit is privileged, and Dorit tends to, seem like she's living in this bubble, and, you can't really, which Erica even spoke to, using words like angry and like attacked, against black women when you're a white woman, using that against a black woman, just the implications that are there, and I guess like the communication cues, I guess I would call them, I guess, or reading the room maybe, or being aware. And another point, Dorit lacking self-awareness. So they're talking a lot about those things, and I don't disagree with any of them. I did like that, even when, because I don't want to like skate over it, but I'm going to touch on it so I can get back to what I was saying. Even when Dorit was talking to Erica seems like she understands, obviously, because she cut in and she's like, it's a big deal using the word attack because you're white and she's black. I'm glad that's accountability. So let me give points there. So that's some accountability, and it didn't seem like Dorit was being adversarial in the conversation with Erica. It seemed like she was open to having a conversation with Garcelle and understanding. So great. But we move on to Garcelle's position, and I've just highlighted everything she said. And me, I guess even, I don't want to feel like I'm coming from a biased standpoint because I'm obviously black, but I also want to, because I feel like this is just a general thing of like, first of all, I feel like the word attack, like in terms of like, we're having a conversation, right? And nobody has touched anybody or done this and done that, da 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 da. I just feel like the attack word is such a heavy word as it is already, and I'm so big on words meaning things. So I already feel like that's an issue outside of the particulars, right? But then when you look at this situation, because I hadn't even thought about it, honestly, and that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I just didn't think about it because I already don't like the word attack. But I have absolutely no issue with Garcelle bringing up the fact like, hey girl, don't say that I attacked you because you're a white woman, I'm a black woman, and that has weird implications for me where I'm the minority on this television show, and I'm probably the minority of the viewers of this TV show, right? So not a lot of people can relate to my experience, and Garcelle didn't say any of this, but this is the way that I'm feeling when I'm empathizing. It's got to be exhausting to be on a TV show where you're already the minority, and then black people are probably the minority of the viewers of this television show. So now you're on this show and you're saying, that bothers me, that affects me emotionally, and you're having to justify and rationalize and explain that to a group of people that are not going to understand. Some people are not going to understand just because they can't. Some people are not going to understand because they're choosing not to understand. You know what I'm saying? So that has to be exhausting. And I really felt it when she was like, I'm not here to educate you. You know what I'm saying? Because she's not. Like, that's not her job. So... And then also, you think about people like Ebony K. Williams from The Real Housewives of New York. When these black women come on these shows with majority white people, and they have to set their boundaries and say, hey, this is not okay to say to me, white woman to a black woman, just because of the implications. Let me at least give you that tidbit that I don't like that. Then the viewers kind of not even just the viewers, it seems like sometimes the cast even push back and they're like, why do we have to hear about this? Like, why are we getting black history lessons? Like, why does it have to get so serious? Like, if you watch that season of New York, you know all the backlash. So even if people aren't saying it out loud, you still feel like that might be a response, right? So I can understand Garcelle feeling exhausted because this also isn't the first time that she's had to speak to that difference in the group, right? She's had to do it a couple times. So I can understand that being emotionally exhausting for her. And I can't seem to understand, obviously it hasn't directly involved Dorit in the past. I will give her that. But just being in the group, if you're willing to sit and listen, what is this, Garcelle's third or fourth season? If you're sitting and you're listening, I feel like you could have picked up on that. That's just my personal opinion. And so I don't want to too much assess it because we obviously get to sit down with Dorit and Garcelle later. So I want to talk about that more in detail. But in terms of Garcelle saying, she cried herself to sleep and she felt emotional about it, and the way that conversation went and what she's saying about Dorit, like being in a bubble and being privileged, and not educating her, it makes perfect sense to me. And I think that everybody else in the room, I think their silence speaks volumes. Not necessarily that I'm saying it's bad, like, again, cookies to Erica for the accountability, but I'm saying I feel like everybody else in the group, the feeling that I was getting from watching it through my Samsung, was that everybody knew where Garcelle was coming from. That's just my opinion. And it was kind of just Dorit looking like, because Dorit always just, whatever, we'll get into Dorit later. We move on. I have to be honest, it's a weird juxtaposition for me. I'm not too interested in the matchmaking storyline for Sutton. However, I am thoroughly enjoying watching her go on the dates. Like the date part. The matchmaking part, I'm like, eh. But like the dates, they're interesting, and I feel like it gives us a different perspective of Sutton, and it gives us some different interaction, right? I've spoken about this, I don't remember on which franchise, but there are certain people that aren't necessarily in the mix of the masses of the group, right? So Sutton doesn't necessarily have a connection with everybody in the group where it's like, oh, Sutton can film with so-and-so, and Sutton can film with so-and-so, and Sutton can film with so-and-so. And it can, she can film with these people, and there can be bits of like fun in there, but where's the substance? What do we really want to do? How are we turning the corner? Where is this taking the story, right? I don't think that there are a lot of people in the group that Sutton can do that with. Not to any fault of Sutton. There's no shade to Sutton because I love Sutton. But I feel like when you have characters like that on these shows, and they do exist, you have to find different avenues to show their personality. And I think it's very hard sometimes to show Sutton's personal story and her personality when filming with the other ladies. Sometimes it's very limited to her just being able to do it with Garcelle. So in saying that, I do appreciate being able to see her go on dates and, do that. The date that she went on in this episode, obviously that's down the line, but we might as well touch on it now. That seemed like it was a fun date. I enjoyed that. I didn't mind watching it. It wasn't passive to me where it was like, why is this on? I don't have to watch this. I was engaged in the conversation that they were having, and the fact that she was taking notes from the matchmaker, where I didn't really care for that scene, but she was taking notes and she was doing things differently and, dating differently, and it had a better outcome. I'm fine with that. I'm enjoying seeing Kyle. I think Kyle has a similar stance almost, because Kyle seems like this season at least she's pulling back a lot, right? So we're not really getting much substantive conversation with her and anybody else in the group either, and so we need to see her with somebody so that we can see her personal story. Like, talk to us, like, what's going on with you? We're obviously not getting that with Mauricio because they're doing whatever they're doing. We're obviously not going to get that with Morgan because I don't feel like they're giving us the truth about that relationship, whatever the hell that may be. So where are we going to get that from, right? So I don't mind, obviously, seeing Kyle with her sister. I think that that's going to be the most effective. And so, especially because she's also been on the show, so she knows how to come in and do the scene. Not that it's being produced or not authentic, but she knows, the approach. I did like hearing Kyle explain, because I do feel like I've been stuck at, like, what's the problem, with this whole Kathy thing? Because I don't know, because I was stuck on Kathy apologized. That's just how I kept feeling. So I didn't know where the disconnect came from. But she did get a chance to explain it and say, Kathy did apologize, when she came to our house and Lisa was there and it almost went left. But, things worked out or whatever. But then at the reunion and then like on social media, Kathy was saying, like, essentially saying Kyle was playing victim, and she did say she was trying to be a martyr and act like it was only happening to her. And so Kyle feels like that negates the apology, and that means that Kathy didn't really mean the apology. I don't think that. I don't really think that they play off of each other. Not to take away from Kyle's feelings, if that's how she feels and that's how she feels. But I don't think that those two things play together, right? I think that Kathy was sincere in her apology, and I think that she held herself accountable. I think that it was a very productive conversation that happened last season. However, you have to think about the fact that it happened, right? So we get to the reunion. Of course, we have to rehash it. Of course. So Kyle has to express, I was upset by this. You hurt me by this, blah, 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 blah. And I feel like it started, if I'm remembering correctly, I'm trying to give grace because I feel like I have a great memory. But, I feel like Kathy was willing to have the conversation at the reunion. But Kyle was being very, woe is me. Like, I don't, you know what I'm saying? And again, I think that makes sense because we have to rehash it. So I'm sure the feelings are still a little bit raw. But at that point, I feel like after you've already received an apology from your sister, I don't know that I would be so like, why would you do that to me? Like, that's just how it felt Kyle was doing it at the reunion. Like, it didn't feel like she was trying to move forward at all and say, you hurt me, so we're either going to not rock with each other or we're going to work on it or whatever. It felt like, you hurt me, why would you hurt me? And it's like, We already had this conversation, so I don't know why we're trying to get into those logistics again. I don't know if it's making sense, but like I feel like that would annoy me as well. Like, why are you doing this whole victim thing? And we've already gone over this. As well as there's another thing at play. We found out during the reunion, not reunion, excuse me, finale of last season, that somebody was in the mix of, leaking this information about Kathy, right? And, the thought was that it was somebody in that group, like the Erica or the Lisa or some combination of the two. And Kyle wasn't upset about that. Like, she was a little bit upset and she touched on it, but she was more so crying on Kathy's blazer. So it was just like, I understood the frustration of Kathy being like, girl, but you're acting like a martyr, like it's just you. Like, the situation did also affect Kathy. Like, Kathy was wrong. I feel like she took the accountability, but she's also saying like, girl, and this isn't the first time that it's happened from what I hear, right? I didn't watch the seasons with Kim, but like, Kyle tends to put her friends before her sisters. And they come on this show and these ladies, kind of gang up on them. And it did kind of feel like that's what was happening to Kathy. Like, it felt like they were trying to bring Kathy down. You know what I'm saying? Like, kind of silence her and bring her down a little bit and not make her so grand, because everybody was so excited for Kathy to be on the show, and it just felt like they wanted to dumb her down a little bit, and they were sticking their nose in the sister business, and it was just very weird. You know what I'm saying? But Kyle didn't have that energy for them. She had it for Kathy. So it just got overwhelming. It's like, girl, shut up. Like, so I get it. Like, she cried the whole last reunion, so I can understand Kathy's standpoint. So I like that Kim, talked it out talked it out with her, excuse me. And, Kyle saying like, I don't know if I want that relationship. Fine, whatever. I think it's fair for Kyle to set boundaries, and I think that is necessary. I don't know that she has any with anybody. So I think that that's what's putting her in this like state of mind right now, where it's like, well, I'm just going to stand here like this, and I'm just going to be adversarial to everything, and everybody does everything wrong to me. I get it. Sometimes we get in our feelings when we let so much roll off of our back and then it just kind of explodes. That's natural, but it's starting to be time for Kyle to do some self-reflection and see what she can do, right? You know how people say, like, do your best and let God do the rest? She needs to do her best in the situation to make sure she's putting her best foot forward, make sure she didn't do anything wrong. And her sister even asked her, like, Kim asked her, she's like, you don't feel like you did anything wrong in this situation? And Kyle didn't want to talk about it. She got defensive, right? So that's my point. Like, do some self-reflecting and make sure you're doing everything right. Because we've heard it. We get what you're upset with Kathy about. But stop regurgitating it, right? Now, let's turn the corner. Make sure you're doing everything right. Make sure you've corrected yourself and taken accountability for your part. And then let Kathy be wrong. And if Kathy's wrong, then let Kathy be wrong. And let's move on. But we don't want to hear the crying anymore. It's old, it's tired, and it's stupid. This was a lot of talk on Twitter. I guess there was like a cutout scene of Crystal kind of like having a blow up with the group during the whole, or after the whole Erica and Denise thing. And they showed it as a flashback on this episode because Crystal referenced it. She was talking to her husband about, she talked about 3 different topics with her husband because we haven't really been getting into Crystal. So like, oh, let's play catch up. It was real messy. But she's basically saying the group is saying she doesn't speak up. And so they show us the scene as a flashback that was allegedly cut. And she's saying like, you guys don't hear me unless I'm kicking and screaming and yelling. Like, y'all want me to yell all the time, and me speaking in this tone of voice, this calm tone of voice, is never okay for y'all. And that, that frustrates her, and that makes sense. And I don't know. Like, I don't know, because it's hard to form an opinion about it when you're hearing that her scenes are being cut. You know what I'm saying? Because she is very opinionated, and I guess that we've seen it in the confessional more than we've seen it in the actual scenes. But I don't know that that's strategic on Crystal. Like, I don't know that I get the impression that Crystal is going into these scenes in person with these ladies and she doesn't want to speak. She'll only do it behind their backs. I just don't get that impression. That's just not what I'm buying. But I also don't feel like I'm getting enough information to make an opinion about that. And I think that that's a production issue. And she also talks about, which I was curious about, like, the ladies are very open. Some of the ladies are very open about being on Ozempic and being skinny. And she briefly mentions, like, everybody's skinny now and that makes me feel self-conscious and, all that good stuff. So I was wondering if she had a stance on that. I like to hear that she does have a stance on that. I love that she's given the opportunity to talk about that, but it felt like it didn't have any context. It felt like it was rushed. So that was just step two and her having like a catch up conversation. It felt like they called her in and said, "Hey, Crystal, we forgot you were here for a little while. Can we catch up on some storylines with you? Please sit down with Rob and let's chat about it." And they just went 1, 2, 3. So that was number two. Number three was, which was supposed to be her main storyline, was her big thing with her brother. And she touches on it. She's like, "Well, I haven't really talked to him." And I'm like, "Well, we haven't really talked about him." So same. And she's basically surmising, she's the younger sister, but she's always kind of mothered her brother and it's kind of their culture. So I feel like that puts a fine period on it for me. Like, I just don't need to hear much more about that. I would honestly prefer to just see Crystal. Is going to have to be overly produced, but I will be pushing Crystal into groups that you wouldn't expect her to see. And I want to see her interact with the group because I think she has it. But in my opinion, I don't think that she's been given the opportunity to show it. Because what she's talking about, but aside from the Ozempic stuff, because I was interested in that, I just don't think that is substantive. So we finally get to the Dorit and Garcelle lunch, and I kind of was like, I don't necessarily want to watch this because I just kind of knew it wasn't going to go anywhere, but I was down to listen. It was comical to hear them get started. It was very awkward. It was very silent. And, Dorit's giving Garcelle the floor to speak. But Garcelle, she starts with the word attacked, and she tells her, don't say attacked or angry or I forgot the other words she said to black women. And Dorit is immediately, I couldn't think of the word. It took me a while until Garcelle said it's not that it's a difficult word, but it's defensive. But I felt, as I was watching, it was more so of an experience, and I just felt like Dorit was being adversarial. Like, it was turning me off. I didn't have the language to describe why. It's not necessarily, she wasn't being nasty, she wasn't doing anything mean, but it just was not clicking. And I can understand the frustration that Garcelle feels, and I'm glad that she was able to get it out, because there's just this sense of fragility when it comes to Dorit, right? Like, I can understand that the information that she's receiving and the critiques and the notes, I understand that they're uncomfortable, but that's not the way to respond to those things, right? It's not to be defensive. That doesn't work out in your favor. More specifically, when Garcelle, says she has like this, she's going to be blunt with her, and she has like a tendency to do this like unaware Karen thing. And, I think in the scene she was responding kind of, because she said how so she's getting the clarification before she responds, but still, like, she took it to a place of, are you trying to call me racist? And at the end of the day, being a Karen has nothing to do with racism. I can understand them maybe being relative in somebody's brain. Like, if I was a white person and I hear somebody call me a Karen, I know that being a Karen is such a negative thing, so it'll probably jump me to racism as well. But being a Karen is more so about white fragility and the fact that you almost are kind of crying wolf. Like, you're always the victim. It's always something irrationally wrong, right? It is more so kind of the experience. Like, it's always like, woe is me, woe is me, woe is me. And you kind of, and it's a lot of the times at the expense of black people. That's more so what being a Karen is. Not necessarily being racist, is that you don't have any self-awareness. You only really care about yourself. You're living in this bubble, as they say. Dorit, she really just started it off wrong. Like, she's like, we all use the word attack in the group. And Garcelle had the perfect response. She's like, with me? Is it with me? And it's like, yeah, like, again, like, I don't like the word attack, period. But Garcelle is talking about a specific experience of a white woman or white person, whatever, saying that a black person attacked them, especially if they're just having a verbal conversation. There's nothing really happening. You know what I'm saying? That's a specific experience that Garcelle is speaking to. And Dorit is trying to generalize it and say, like, well, what is the issue? Because it doesn't affect other people. We're not talking about how it affects other people. We are talking about how it affects Garcelle. So that's how she already started off wrong. And then even with Dorit saying, I feel like we both come from marginalized groups because I'm Jewish, so I feel like we would have more in common. I don't think that's a terrible point to bring up, but I feel like it's a moot point at this point, because you could have brought that up a long time ago if that's how you felt, first of all. And then second of all, again, that just doesn't have anything to do with what Garcelle is talking about on today. Garcelle is talking about a specific experience of you saying that you attacked her, and she's just trying to get that point out. And you've been so defensive against that point that she's had to over-explain it. And not only is she over-explaining that, she's trying to over-explain it to you, girl. I shouldn't have to be trying to over-explain it to you. And you're adding all these caveats in, like, well, everybody says attacked, and well, I'm Jewish, and well, we should have bonded. I feel like you're calling me racist. Like, you're doing all these extra things, and that's just not what we're talking about. So that's why I say it just feels like Dorit definitely has this, when Garcelle said privilege, this weird bubble of privilege and white fragility sometimes, where it's just like everything's happening to me, everything's happening to me. Like there's an outside world, and as a human, it's valid to feel like you are being poked at. Maybe I feel like that Dorit has always felt like she's been poked at Garcelle, and maybe there's some truth to that, right? But I don't. There's not the space and time to use that as your response argument when Garcelle is saying you did something to me. It's not, that's just this, if Garcelle's expressed to you, you hurt my feelings because you did this, you don't come back and say, well, that's because you poke fun at me. Like, that's because you pick on me, Garcelle. That's because you attack me. That's a terrible way to have a conversation. I also like I said, that there could be some truth to what Dorit is feeling isolated, you know what I'm saying, have a different conversation about that. But I like that Garcelle at least touched on it and said, hey, I just feel like basically it was a build up and you've been rubbing me the wrong way. And certain things have happened. She referenced, when they had that lunch, I think it was at Lisa Rinna's house, and Dorit was trying to express how worldly she was, and she started naming off how many people of color work for her. And even before Garcelle said something, me as a viewer, I was like it just felt like she doesn't live in reality. Like that can't be your argument, Dorit. It can't. It just always seems so crazy, the things that Dorit is saying. It doesn't seem like she's aware. It doesn't seem like she's thinking. And I can understand that Garcelle's in this group. I can understand that annoying the hell out of her. You know what I'm saying? And she has every right to say something about it. I mean, Garcelle says we're good. They end the conversation. Are they going to be good? No. This is the most context that has been given to any conversation with them, I think I would say, because I think that Garcelle was more fully able to explain her overall annoyance with Dorit. But, I think that Garcelle has given up on it just as equally as Dorit has. And I'm not saying that as in a negative way for either one of them. For me, the energy that I got was just more so like, we're never going to make it. At the end of the day, like, we care about the points that are being given. We understand that we rubbed each other the wrong way, and we definitely may feel sorry for that. But this ain't going to be a thing. And that's what I got from it. So for me, that was the better part of the episode, that and the Kyle and Kim conversation. But other than that, I'm still not in love with this season, but they're going to be going on a trip, so I'm excited to see what happens there. Let me know what y'all think, and I'll see y'all in the next one.